you will see that our timber production has drastically fallen. So Ghanaians will have to start importing wood for their buildings. What is very critically important to human beings, and in fact for Africa, 60 to 70% of our occupation are in the agrarian sector, in agriculture. In fact, if Africa would grow into a socio-economic powerful entity, then we will need to invest significantly in our agricultural production. The EU coordinator said something that really struck me, that of a potential of 3.5 billion trade in West Africa, Ghana is only be able to trade in the margins of $10 million or something. And I sat down and I was like, my God, but this is not right.
In the next 10 years to come, you have, an expertise in strategic foresight. In the next 10 years to come, or even in the next 5 years to come, how is this going to affect Ghana negatively if we don't put the standards in place? Hello, you're welcome to AgroRiches TV, and today promises to be an insightful conversation. Well, today I'm moving the conversation from the studio, and we are here at the Accra City Hotel to speak to an African diplomat, a man who has risen through the ranks to be the Deputy UNDP Country Director for Rwanda. We're speaking and touching on some crucial topics in international trade. We're speaking on trade in Africa, the trade barriers, and how we can overcome trade barriers in Ghana to remain promising on the international market. We also be speaking on climate change because he's an expert when it comes to issues such as this. He's the Executive Vice President of CO2 Africa project, and they are doing so amazing when it comes to giving out solutions to mitigate the challenges posed by climate change. I'll be speaking with a man who has a multifaceted personality. He is Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a great delight to
thank you so much. It's really a privilege to have you on AgroRiches TV.
Thank you very much. You're doing fantastic work, and I truly appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Transform Ghana and Africa.
Yeah, we'll be having amazing discussion on trade in Africa, and we will divert into some fields as well, as you have expert in governance and how we can use our governance systems to transform the economy and Africa as a whole.
I'll be very delighted to share my views. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so thanks for staying with us on AgroRiches TV. This particular exclusive interview is brought to you by Tias Group and Kais. Tias Group is a company that is offering agribusinesses and investors with 80% financial support. So if you want to own a processing factory, contact Tias Group on 020-475-8888. And we also proudly sponsored by Kais. Kais is a B2B and an e-commerce platform that connects the African agribusinesses to the Asian market. So if you're an African agribusiness and you want your products to be well known and marketed on the Asian continent, the Kais platform is right and best for you. So today I'm going to be speaking with a man who has a multifaceted personality. He's an African diplomat and then also in governance and development expert. He's an expert in international trade and supply chain standards. He has over 25 years of experience in 36 countries, shaping policy design and operational implementation on Africa's international diplomacy, governance, geopolitics, and human and economic development. He has 16 years of experience also in working with the United Nations, and he has served as the senior advisor in the executive office of the Secretary General's office, and recently is also the senior policy advisor to the UN Secretary General in the Sahel region. He's the Executive Vice President of CO2 Capital Africa project. And one, interesting fact about him is that he's the son of the Gan Bukom community. I'm here at the Accra City Hotel with Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
So when we mention, or when we say Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo, who is he? Can you tell us a brief about yourself?
All right, thank you very much, and thanks very much for the elaborate profile that you provided. I like to call myself as a son of Odudu and a man of the Gang community, simply because I believe that my formative years living in Accra, starting my schooling, my primary school from a public school, I had tremendous support from the communities at Adenko, Amamomo to the environs in the Gang community, where they helped to shape not just my ideals, my value systems, my thought processes, but some kind of confidence in me to grow in the midst of poverty and struggle, that I have social system support to do very well in school, because I was blessed with academic intelligence as I grew up. I went to Accra Academy from private
so you're a Bleu.
I'm a Bleu guy, very proud Bleu guy.
You know, there used to be that rival between Bleu and at that time the school I used to attend, Pope John. Yeah.
Oh, Pope John.
So
I see. But we do have some Pojobes who are my mates as I study in Accra Academy. And then from then I went to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. That's where I picked up my natural resources background. And after graduation from there, I had the privilege to work in Ghana briefly with Ghana Wildlife Society, which is one of the prominent conservation organizations in the country that we're dealing with issues around forest ecology, forest conservation, wetlands, Ramsar sites, wildlife issues, and promoting the policy around one of the things that we talk about now, which is the green growth strategies. Ghana Wildlife Society, under the auspices and the leadership of Professor Yan Tiamu, really did tremendous work to push the profile of Ghana in the conservation area. And I was happy to serve under her leadership. From there, I got opportunity to go and study in Oxford University with full scholarship.
Wow.
And I graduated from Oxford University as an outstanding African student who was a postgraduate student, was given a feature in the prestigious Oxford Annual Review. From there, I worked for a company called ProForest, where I developed the international trade standards for the supply chain. And I got opportunity to join the United Nations thereon. And here we are after 16 years of the United Nations, serving different capacities in the Office of the Secretary General, in the Office of the Assistant Secretary General and Head of UNDP Africa. And then recently, I led the strategic group linked that actually is helping UN to deal with the issues of the Sahel region. I was very happy that I was quite instrumental in working with the Secretary General Special Advisor for the Sahel and a coordinator now for the Sahel, including the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, to be able to shape this Sahel blueprint that we know. So I'm quite delighted to have served in all these 36 countries and beyond, and seeing some challenges that Africa has faced in the crisis environment, humanitarian environment, development environment. And now, I take a break, and I'm helping to lead African strategy for a new company that has a great ambition to promote support through climate change, creating value with government through carbon trading, financing, and marketing. And the idea is that we will leverage this carbon financing to help countries to make green growth strategies, to implement them, but also to create wealth for communities, and ensure that rather than African losing out, they actually gain a lot in it. So that is my ambition now with the CO2 capital.
Okay. We know of climate change, as you rightly stated, with CO2 Africa, Capital Africa projects, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you are trying to mitigate the challenges posed by climate change.
Yes.
In agriculture, what is the company focusing on?
So as you know, one of the things that it is very vital in the fight for climate change and building resilience in communities is to focus on what is very critically important to human beings. And in fact, for Africa, 60 to 70% of our occupation are in the agrarian sector, in agriculture. In fact, if Africa would grow into a socio-economic powerful entity, then we will need to invest significantly in our agricultural production, not just in the production realm, but across the processing and the value chain. And climate change portends a threat to our agricultural productivity. If you look at the area in the Sahel, look at the Somalia region, all this Sahel belt, the variability of the climate and its impact on agricultural productivity is really dangerous. And it's also one of the things that is promoting crisis in the Sahel region, where because of the shortages of fodder or pasture areas, then you have farmers and herders having conflict. And analysis indicate that there have been more deaths through farmer-herder clashes than there have been in terrorist acts. So it just tells you how climate change is so vital to dealing with the issue of geopolitics and of crisis in countries. What we want to do with CO2 capital is to leverage the carbon sequestration of forest lands or forest estates or agricultural lands, tokenizing these on a blockchain and actually putting it on a market platform to be able to create value, not just for the farmers, but for landowners. And this McKinsey report in 2022 indicated that the potential for this for Africa is $978 billion per year.
Wow.
So
that's a potential in that.
So it's actually the new goals that Africa is going to develop. But the issue is that we should not deal with it like we have dealt with other commodities, where you have value, but you get very little for it. Look at our country, Ghana, for example. How much are we making from cocoa? How much are we making from gold or natural resources? So if we were to really make sure that Africa would benefit from their natural resources and from everything associated with it, with this climate change coming, my vision and our vision is CO2 capital is that we need to get a Pan-African entity that can really leverage the financings for people. At the global market, Africa gets probably 10% of what they get as value. We are offering 30 to 40%, including 20% going to social impact fund for the development of communities. So we are bringing revolution into this whole climate change credit realm, and that is not going to be easy, but it is the fight that we want to push to make sure it happens.
Okay, we'll be moving into trade very soon, but let's talk about brilliant minds like you. We have a whole lot of brilliant minds who are abroad working for the 19 nations, but are not in the political system or in the political administration when it comes to their home countries. For example, you are working with the UN. We need brilliant minds like you in Ghana to help shape our governance, to help shape trade systems with the international world and all that. So what do you have to say with that?
This is a very good question, and I would say that Ghana had, if you recognize that Ghana has had Kofi Annan, we have Dr. Mbring Chambers, who is my senior and a mentor, who are really recognized for the work that he did in UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, and he's still doing, and what he did also for Ghana before joining the United Nations. In fact, at some point, Alan Chamantin also did some work with the International Company. There are many international Ghanaians who are doing extremely well in the United Nations, and some are occupants of very salient and critical positions, even in the World Bank, in the IMF. And for example, a senior advisor on economics to Paul Kagame today is, I call him Elder Kwashi, who is Ghanaian, who served with the World Bank before joining. And look at what he's done in terms of and he's the brain behind the economic transformation agenda in Rwanda. So to say that Ghanaians have brilliant minds, even the private sector, in McKinsey, places like, is really the truth. Now, what really concerns me is that we don't see a full expression of these brilliant minds in our body politics, where we sometimes become too old. When we retire, that's when we want to engage in our politics, and I don't think it's the case. We should do that. We should encourage Ghanaians that find brains that can be occupants of state departments, state institutions, are members of parliament, even as mayors or DCs or assemblymen. They can bring their ideas to help shape the country that we are building. And I tend to think that Ghana is at a point where we should consider it as a crossroads. Because if you look at our 1992 Constitution and how we have dealt with it over time, over 3 decades of democratic institutions we've had, we are really at a crossroads where we've had significant experiences with what our democracy is.
Yeah.
And we, the people now, can begin to shape it to meet our own needs. So I would encourage the citizens to set standards for our politics and our governance. And we should come and engage in this. And that's something that I feel is very important to do.
I believe we need you in the Ghanaian politics today. Do you have any ambitions for any political office in Ghana?
I don't have any ambition at the moment, but what I do have is a desire. It's really, I do have a desire to help, a desire to be part of the leadership system, policies and leadership, and be able to bring my brain and my ideas into this. But I want to do so by being of service to citizens. I want to do so by recognizing the abilities that citizens have and helping to hone it and to grow in, particularly investing in the youth and strengthening leadership, self-leadership, self-discipline, self-inspiration to be able to take the country to the next level.
So you've mentioned three aspects. What is that one key thing that you address in Ghana if you are to enter into the political administration?
Discipline and integrity. I think Ghanaians need discipline to help us focus on our agenda. What is it that we want to achieve? Why are we doing democratic politics? We should answer those questions. We should answer the question, what is our national character? If you take a Ghanaian here and a Nigerian, what is it that makes it different and unique from the Nigerian? What should be our economic character? How should people manage our public offices? So discipline and having a blueprint development agenda is very important. And the other thing is integrity. Ghanaians are known to be trustworthy people. I grew up knowing these things. And I truly believe that we have to bring morality and virtues into our leadership all across our societies, including politics. Because that is what will help us to bring about the transformation that we are looking for. It shouldn't be that people think, well, if you want to be corrupt, then you join politics. No, politics is a very noble cause. It shouldn't be that somebody would use power and abuse it in order to be able to make ends meet. It shouldn't be this. We need to be able to address our discipline and our integrity in our lifestyle.
So we shouldn't look at the negative aspects of politics, but we should look at the positive aspect where we could use the opportunity to shape the country and transform the country.
Because that's the power of politics. And I think that when you have the right people occupying these offices, it really will help us. I mean, if you think of a country of a GDP of 77 billion consistently for over the past 5 years, why is it that we still remain the way it is? And we see the poverty increasing on our streets, and we see the hardships, and we see our youth not able to get jobs. How can we diversify economy? How can we make sure that carpenters will be carpenters, but they will be wealthy? That plumbers will be plumbers, but they will be wealthy? Even if you are a sanitary, somebody cleaning toilets or whatever it is, and that's the service that you have. You are so skillful, has to be able to distinguish yourself with what you are doing, and that you'll be able to have enough money to save to invest in your children going to school.
That comes into career development.
And self-development and so on. I feel that people must just be who they are, but must excel in everything they are doing.
Okay, that brings us to trade. Ghana has been ranked by the World Trade Organization as the top 10, as part of the top 10 African countries that are doing so well when it comes to the economies. But we still face that impact on our economy with respect to poverty as well as the unemployment rates. And even now we have a lot of youth who are, going abroad to find greener pastures. So to you, how is Ghana faring with trade internationally, and how can we leverage on that to boost economic development?
You know, I recently were together. I guess we were together an agri-food.
Yes, agri-food. Yeah.
You know, and the EU coordinator said something that really struck me. That of a potential of 3.5 billion trade in West Africa, Ghana is only be able to trade in the margins of $10 million or something.
That's
and
very low.
I sat down and I was like, my God, but this is not right. When you look at what we can do as a nation, first let me start from the geopolitical positioning of Ghana.
Okay.
Where we are equidistant to Europe and to Asia and Latin America and so on. And within West Africa, the uniqueness of Ghana being a country that is stable, a country that has rules of law, a country that are very intelligent people. The human capital is one that is very distinguished from many others in West Africa, to the extent that we have some of our friends coming from other countries coming here, in neighboring countries coming here to study. Then when you look at all this potential, then it begs the question, why is the Ghana unable to live out its full potential? And this is why I feel that it's important for us to think about how we can reset ourselves into the economy. So let's start from the critical sectors of the economy where we should grow. Agribusiness, for example. Why can't we have cocoa processing here, not just growing chocolates, producing chocolate, but different derivatives of the products. What about palm oil? Derivatives of palm oil products, lipsticks, white chocolate, and all sort of things. What about pepper? Derivatives of pepper all around. What about garden eggs? What about all the things that we eat? Right. How can you have a country where 90% of what we eat is all imported? You cannot do that. So focusing on agri sector with processing and industrialization is extremely important to do. The second thing is also to look at how Ghana can serve the West African economy. Agri sector again is one. ADB said about 1 trillion economy. How much of that do we want to own as Ghanaians? Even if we don't produce raw materials, can we create an industrial base where we can feed our raw materials from production from Burkina, from Mali, from Niger, and Ghana then produces processes and packages and export them across the region. When you look at the service sector, look at digitalization, for example. We have a fiber optic, we're moving well with that, building on this. Could we be the hub that will be the manufacturing, I will have the manufacturing plants for mobile phones, for example, or the batteries for mobile phones with the lithium that we have discovered? Could we be the manufacturing plants for the things that digital infrastructure that are needed? Linking that to our engineering sector. Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, there are also other engineering schools. Can we grow our human capital such that Liberia will rely on us to go and build the engineering factories or sectors? Or infrastructure sectors, or the countries that are struggling and rebuilding? Could we, with a stable country as we are, make our universities state of the art, that a Ghanaian expert are the ones that can be sold, if you like, to other countries to help build them up, to bring foreign exchange to us? Can we build ourselves as an economic prowess in West Africa? That is what we need to think about. And it is not out of our ambit to do so. We can be able to achieve this. We have all the structures that enables us to do it. The difference is that we need to have sustainable leadership. And we need to have leadership that is selfless, that has integrity, that has strategic foresighting, and can see beyond what others don't see, and use that inspiration to get all of us off the street to work. All right. So I think that, look at all the infrastructure going on. It is said in Ghana, for example, that if you want to build a good house, you don't need it. The tilers that you need are actually coming from Togo. Where are the Ghanaian tilers? Why can't we manufacture tiles with all the natural resources we have in Shine Hills? I think we as a country need to be ambitious, very courageous, and citizens must demand these things I'm saying.
So, the problem with Ghana has to do with the fact that we focus mainly on the natural resources. We have the natural resources in abundance, but we are interested in exporting the raw ones to the international market, rather than we processing more of them. And when it comes to agribusiness, back to agribusiness, we have majority of our crops, about 30% to 40% that goes waste. So we're experiencing a huge, a portion of when it comes to post-harvest losses with our agricultural products.
Yeah.
So you rightly made mention that we should begin processing our crops, such as cocoa.
Yes.
Okay. So that is on the international market. What is Ghana not doing right when it comes to the international market?
I think Ghana is not focusing on the factors of production and maximizing those.
Okay.
So, for example, access to land for farming. If you want to promote agricultural productivity in farming, I saw something in Rwanda which is very interesting. So there is a government scheme that has looked at all the fertile lands or the lands that they want to allocate for agriculture.
Okay.
And they have provided all the services associated with it. Some will say, well, Rwanda is ahead of the game, but we can do that in Ghana. That we need to, first and foremost, look at the factors of production.
Okay.
Right? The land.
The land, yeah.
Let's make sure that we can make land accessible for agriculture.
Yeah.
And we can service those lands so that any youth or farmers who want to engage in agribusiness will be able to have access to the things that they needed to do. One district, one factory idea with a dam was very useful.
Yeah.
Again, we face the challenges of implementation, but we should not take policies that are very useful and make it more political. We need to be able to look at policies that are useful, that can be continuously implemented with a different brain. And I think that we can transform our agriculture by dealing with productivity, dealing with the issue of access to finance for processing. And we also need to deal with the warehousing issues. Nowadays, there are solar warehouses as well that can hold the perishable crops that we are, the tomatoes, the onions, and so on, so that we can minimize our waste. And we need to create avenues for markets to be able to move on. And all these chains are industries or jobs that you are creating all over the place.
Yeah.
So agriculture really must be our entry point for really unleashing our growth and development in this country. When it comes to the natural resources itself, the strategic ones I call, the ones that are emerging, such as the copper, the platinums, the lithiums, which are driving digital economies, we need to be very serious about them. Okay. How can we take advantage of our digital center we created to build expertise in artificial intelligence, expertise in manufacturing lithium batteries and so on. So we create the conditions necessary for the Elon Musks and others to come and do a manufacturing plant here
and even
investing in that. We need to really build an enabling environment for all these things. And there are youth that, the fact that you go and study history does not mean that you cannot change your divert yourself, your ideas into using skills that you are naturally endowed to do other things. You can be in history, but you have wonderful skills that you can become a farmer. And so we need to encourage these things.
Okay.
Really need to encourage it. And we need to be very deliberate at putting resources into this. One of the things I would say is that as a country, we need to leverage our strategic resources such as oil and gas to create venture capital. Okay. And when you create a venture capital to stimulate agricultural enterprises and all kinds of enterprises to emerge. Because when there's finance, then you can access the technology, you can access the capacity, and you can invest in people. There are others, people like you, in media where you are, that you can compete with the BBCs, for example. What would it take to get there? So with the venture capital, we can stimulate some of these ideas where those who have significant experience in a certain sector and they have vision to grow could be stimulated to move. And along them, they can pull those who are novices. But what I see is that we make some of these issues political decisions, and I think we have to depoliticize these things. Then we will be fine as a country.
All right, you made mention of Rwanda, the transformation agenda.
Yeah.
Ghana, I believe this is a time that we need to, bring more. We have the Ghana Beyond Aid, yes, policy that, the European Union is even backing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to you, what are some of the strategies? In the next 10 years, we should strategically position Ghana in an environment where we could be able to achieve that, where Ghana will be Ghana Beyond Aid, where even now we have the after. I think it's something that we are foreseeing. That if we are to trade beyond, we have to trade between African countries.
Yes.
Take off the trade barriers and all that. We will transform the continent, going to make us powerful in the international market.
Yeah.
So, to you, how do you see these key aspects? But touch on the foresight.
Right. I think as a country, we need to have a critical analysis, or what I call internal reflection of who we are as a country and what we want as a country. And that should shape not just our policies, but the way we manage ourselves. And I'm not just talking about political parties, and I'm mentioning political parties because we are in the time of elections. But what I really wanted to say is that what is important is that we, the people, must drive the agenda that we want.
The people,
right? The people,
is the government.
Because democracy is about government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the people agenda is extremely, extremely important. And we need to really get to that point where we as a people will define what we want. So the first thing I think we need to do is to know what we want.
Okay.
And what we want should be many things. We are looking at the world in which there's serious aging population in the developed world, in the US, in China, in Asia and so on and so forth, in Europe. And so there's estimate that 8 out of 10 human capital that would serve as labor for Fortune 400 companies in the world must be African or come from Africa. So how can we as a nation position ourselves into this? And this is a strategic foresighting. We know in the global demand, and position ourselves as a nation to do that. And what would it take? We have to invest in our human capital. So there must be a very serious policy on our human capital development in the area of artificial intelligence, in the area of digitization, in the area of adept or skillful in farming practices, manufacturing of implements, manufacturing of all kinds of equipment that are needed, the technical know-how of a human capital who is so versatile and so skillful that it will force the Amazons, the Fortune 400 countries to come look for Ghanaian experts. So that's the first thing, which means our educational sector must be one of the most strategic sectors we need to deal with.
It needs to be fortified.
You need to be fortified. Our schools have to be top-notch. Yeah. It's unacceptable to have 9,000 schools under trees in this era. None of these things should be happening again. We need to be able to really deal with our human capital so well that it's impossible for someone to be a youth and not have a job. The second thing is to look at the markets through the AFCFTA. Which aspects of commodities do we want to occupy? Or technology or service sectors that we want to occupy. By this time, we need to have a strategy as a country and tailor those things towards our own people so they can begin to prepare. We need more of the Dangotes in Ghana. We need more of them. We need to have the millionaires. We need to have the billionaires. We need to really make sure all these come in. Politicians must not be millionaires. Private sector individual must be the millionaires. If a politician is a millionaire, there's something wrong with the country. So we need to stimulate the private sector. The private sector must drive our economy. And all the natural resources that with government should be able to open the doors for private sector to take the lead in this. All these things require policy. And I really like the idea of a bus that is coming on the 24-hour economy, which really I believe that is an interesting model. Because
why is it interesting?
Because the first thing I see as an advantage is that it seems to have a vision of minimizing our importation through import substitution and growing our industrialization, putting the people at the center of it. Now, if you do this, then what you are trying to do is that you are expanding the diversity of the economy. Because once people are leading different structure of the economy, you have different things coming up, derivatives of different strands of raw materials, processing, adding value coming. The service sector will grow. And individuals and young youthful exuberance.
Okay.
We have the energy.
Yeah.
So
to work around the clock.
So if you work more than 10 hours and you are going to be well paid, you will put the energy around that.
Yeah.
You will get our health systems working very fine because people will be doing. And what will grow actually is our restaurants. Our women, the young girls, those who do home economics and things, they cook so well.
Yeah.
So if you are in a fast-paced economy, as a young man, you are single, you pass through a restaurant at any time and you know that you can eat and, so it will stimulate the productivity of the economy. And I think that we'll be able to capture a lot of value out of it. It's something that we need to think about.
Yeah. I mean, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, says he's going to bring a full policy, a full document to explain the details and what we should expect in 24-hour economy. So we hope that this will be accepted and this will be developed to help the economy.
But I think what's important is we, the people, should engage in constructing this kind of 24-hour economy, what we talk, to be organically, to grow that, to co-create that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it is in doing so that we will benefit more. And I like that idea. This discussion started from the TUC and looking at the issue of labor and having a well-paid labor. But I will also say that we should look at very skillful and adept labor to the extent that it's impossible for any company that is coming to West Africa to not come to Africa to look for talent, because to come to Ghana to look for talent, because we are just super excellent.
Yes, and
that's the vision that I think that we should be driving towards.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's very insightful. Let's talk about the ESG you developed with the International Trade and Supply Chain Standards for the palm oil and the soy trade. It's having a lot of impact. Tell us about the impact it's having now.
Right. So at the time that we developed the supply chain standards for the Ranty on sustainable palm oil and that for soy, we were faced with this current issue of where commodities were leading to the deforestation and destruction of biodiversity and water resources and so on. So there was a need to develop some standards that can help to mitigate the impact of trade on the environmental system. So we looked at it from the perspective of sustainability. So we look at the social elements of it. How is the palm oil trade not benefiting communities? How is it destroying the livelihoods of the community? How is it destroying, especially the environment where the communities are intimately involved with? So we came out with a standard that will address some of these social elements, from production to processing to all of the energy. So then, the social standards were made from that, including the issues of jobs and the issues of health and environment and so on, and also issues around the health and safety of workers. Then the technical component had to do with the actual factors of production, where you manipulate those factors of production to the point where they are, to the extent that they are also aligned to environmental principles. So, for example, issues around pollution, cutting trees, destroying biodiversity of orangutans at the time, the species that of economic interest, of conservation interest, dealing with them. And then the whole issues around environmental resources protection and sustainability. And we put in the governance. So the supply chain standard was underpinned with the governance structure to make sure we can actually not just implement this, but we can monitor the extent to which their companies are implementing it and adhering to these principles. Now today, interestingly, fast forward 15 years, this is becoming what they call the environmental social governance.
Is it applied everywhere?
Well, I mean, this is applied. There's nothing new in the sun. It's actually a new name of something we have done many years. And now the onus is, except that the onus is being pushed on investors of natural resource commodities, that they should prove the extent to which their investment is identify the issues of environmental and social governance and dealing with it. So in other words, we don't want your investment to promote destruction of the forest. So you need to be responsible about it. And I think it is something that is catching on. And it is good. In terms of Africa,
Yeah.
we've never been used to setting standards for our international investment. It has not worked well for us. So if you look at the mining sector, for example, the distraction in the environment, and who taking responsibility. Let's look at the galamsey. There are individuals that have made fortunes out of the galamsey.
Yeah.
And what have they left behind?
Destruction
of forest, biodiversity resources, the water, and then creating health challenges for the communities. Has anybody been held responsible? You making your money.
Question.
Why are you causing this impact?
A lot of people have gotten kidney disease out of, consuming these waters.
And the people are dying. And so, if you do have an ESG standard, then whoever is making the extraction of that natural resource will first and foremost have to think about how to deal with this impact and budget for it, so that as you extract, you'll be able to, make sure that you do it in ways that will not necessarily strain watersheds and so on. To be honest, I think that anybody who has been involved in galamsey today must be held responsible.
Yeah. And, for example, when it comes to cocoa trade, at the agro-food, the EU set a caution to African cocoa producing nations that if you are producing cocoa in a deforested, or you source your cocoa from deforested or deforested places, you won't be allowed to export your cocoa to the international market. The European Union will not accept that.
Yeah.
So we are looking at this. The galamsey you spoke about,
yes,
that's really affected our cocoa production.
Yeah.
A lot of farmlands have been lost, and then the communities and then even the livelihoods of these farmers have been destroyed. So Ghana, for instance, we really need this ESG to make sure that the business ethics and the environment that we work in is sustainable for the economy and also for the communities. So what do you say to that?
This is perfect, and I think that Ghana will certainly suffer for it if we don't set up an institution or we use Ghana Standard Boards or whoever. But there must be a leadership that is aggressively monitoring this for us, because cocoa is our number one export commodity. And what is unthinkable is to allow our cocoa forests to get to that point where galamsey is actually destroying them, to the point where I read from somewhere that the quality of our cocoa is being impacted by this galamsey. To the extent where there are mercuries or cyanides, in some of the quality of the seeds, and that is dangerous for us, because if you were to sell this international market and it is discovered that it's killing people, then Ghana can be sued. Have we thought about that?
Yeah.
And then the reputational damage to a country is not good, and I think we need to take this seriously. The other point is making sure that today we anticipate that the world is talking a lot about environmental sustainability.
Okay.
And Ghana has natural resources, and that is the natural resources that we base or is the springboard for our development, right? So if the natural resources now has to be extracted sustainably, and you have schools like Institute of Renewable Faculty of Natural Resources, Biological Science, and so on, why are we not using these experts to help us create some of these standards and make our investors strictly adhere to these standards?
Okay.
The other point is also that there's always a thinking that we need international investors. Yes, we do, but we have not, as a people, looked deep within us to see whether or not the people themselves can generate the resources that are needed to form an equity share, for example, in investment. Okay. For example, I believe that there are 5 million Ghanaians, because we're 35 million or so, there are 5 million Ghanaians home and abroad who could have in their savings $10,000 that can pool together into a 5 billion fund that can force the government can then force companies to list on the environment, and we use the 5 billion to buy out equities of this company, including oil and gas sectors or some of the mining companies and so on. And out of this 5 billion, we could also get brilliant Ghanaians who have worked in the natural resource sector with the oil and gas and so on to put themselves together to form a Ghanaian-based company that can be 100% owned. How wonderful will this be to know that the oil and gas 3 prominent oil and gas companies in West Africa is Ghanaian.
Ghanaian.
And then they can go and invest in Liberia and so on. And we can structure in such a way that the government of Ghana owns 20% equity. So that money that comes to the revenue, then we have a social impact development strategy that it goes into it. That way we become self-sufficient and we can create wealth for the rest of the nations, through leveraging wealth in other nations.
Yeah.
And if we have the Ghanaian capital, that the human capital can do this, I mean, we would have dealt with poverty in this country. And I believe that we can expand our brains to make this kind of thinking. That's where we should go. So anticipating the issues on the international realm and developing systems and standards and following those things are very, very important. Because to get to a point where you can have 24-hour economy, you can grow your products.
Yeah.
But if you cannot provide a chain of custody to prove that you are not destroying ecosystem resources, you cannot sell. Well, even AFCFTA will be pushed by the international pressure to put ESG standards, because the earth is one. So you cannot blame China for polluting when you are destroying your ecosystem services. I mean, and then you all attend a climate change conference. And
the funny thing is, we are facing the devastating effects across the world. But Africa happens to be the continent that is facing a huge impact. Yeah, when it comes to climate change.
Yes.
So that's what we rightly said.
Yes.
Although we are all facing it, but the European nations have the funds, the finances to mitigate those challenges.
Yes.
But when it comes to Africa, we don't have the systems in place.
Yeah.
So that means that we need to start promoting and sustaining our ecosystem.
And if you sustain an ecosystem, then you benefit from carbon credits, which is huge amount of money. That can come to you and you can use to develop your economies.
Okay. So if we are not to, put this into practice, if we are not to enforce this, in the next 10 years to come, you have, an expertise in strategic foresight. In the next 10 years to come, or even in the next 5 years to come, how is this going to affect Ghana negatively if we don't put the standards in place?
I think that if you look at the destructive effects of galamsey on our forest estate, I haven't seen the empirics, but you will see that our timber production has drastically fallen. So Ghanaians will have to start importing wood for their buildings. That's
we happen to be one of the countries that
we're exporting
timber,
right? So now all of a sudden we become net importers of wood for our economy, for building. So that the cost of our infrastructure is going to go up.
It's going to,
Then the other thing is also, if you look at our water resources, the extent to which the damage has occurred, processing of our water becomes more expensive, and we don't even have the right technology. So I'm afraid that some of the seepages of the mercuries and the cyanides could find themselves killing so many people in the country, and therefore it shows to you that if you destroy your environment and the basis of your survival, you're going to have challenges, even if you are rich. Now today, look at Dubai. They're taking they have technology that takes a whole desert into maize production farm. Yeah. So they can now export maize. How can you imagine that Dubai is only export grains to Ghana?
It's a fast.
So that's why we have to think very fast. Yeah. We have to stop the destructive effects of our environment. Okay. We need to be very serious as a country to invest in technology, invest our human capital. We need to deal with the issue of the impact of the galamsey. We have to recover our waters and the technology to do that, to recover our waters from the effects of cyanides and so on. I believe that one of the ways to do that is to hold those people who have destroyed this responsible and take some of their wealth out of them and use that to deal with the impact on the forest. That's another way of raising the finance.
We need a political will for that.
You need a political will. And citizens must emphasize this. We need to tell our leaders, this is what we want. If you can do this, we vote for you. If you cannot do this, we don't vote for you. We have to be very clear that the voices of the people must rule this nation at this time. Because If you leave everything to the hands of politics, what you get is compromises that are destructive to you. But if you rise up and you create a standard, then you will say to a member of parliament who have been there for 30 years and have never dealt with the poverty in their community to justify why he or she should be re-elected. If they cannot, he cannot justify it. Don't vote for that person.
Okay.
And I think that's where we just need to be bold. We need to be bold and courageous. Okay. Other countries are doing well. Benin, Togo, they are Senegal. If you look, even Mali, if you look at Burkina Faso, other countries are learning from what is happening, and we have all the time.
And we have all the resources.
There's no crisis per se in our country. We have the resources, we have the brains, and we produce 77 billion GDP per year. Why are we where we are today? We have oil. You just discovered lithium. There are other. You have still extracting gold. Why are these things not plowing back to help us increase the wealth of our country? It's a question that we must all think about.
Okay. What will you tell our African leaders, especially with leaders who are in the trading industry? What will you tell them? What should they be doing now?
I think we need leaders that are very good negotiators. And they must come to a table with something to negotiate on. And one of the things that will be helpful is the fact that Africa possesses the most strategic resources that gets the global economy running. All the raw materials for the global economy are in Africa. So we already have something that can help us to negotiate. Why would you have lithium and negotiate less than 10% of the value for yourself? Why would you have gold and negotiate? So we need to learn from those things.
Go back to that.
And go back to some of these basics to have a very strong negotiating abilities to help us in international trade. And we need to pull together as a continent and define how we want the rest of the world to engage us. And we can do it at a level of commodities. If you're engaging gold producers, this is what should be the minimum. If you're engaging oil producers, this should be the minimum. If you're engaging timber producers, this will be the minimum. As a continent, let's define the minimum wealth that needs to come to us. And we then, in that contract, will also agree to manage our resources sustainably, to create the jobs that are needed, to plow back into water, health, sanitation, social basic services, to continuously increase the wealth of the people. If we do that, Africa will be a very contending force.
Okay, but it is very difficult for one country to say that, okay, we have the gold, and we are negotiating for this minimum quota. Wouldn't it be difficult for one country to push that agenda? And even if Africa as a continent comes together to push that agenda, we'll be able to get there, looking at the pressure that is from the European Union.
Well, for example, if Elon Musk does not have lithium, he will not be able to manufacture his batteries. So what is electric cars with no batteries? So we have a position of strength. And I think we should not go individually. We need to negotiate as a bloc. But in negotiating as a bloc, identify key strategic commodities or resources where you say, when you are dealing with producers of lithium, the minimum that should come to the country should be 30%, or something like that. And we need to have the expertise for the manufacture of lithium in that country where you are producing. And the countries that are producing the lithium will sell it at a certain price and do it together. If Africans commit to this, I don't see how difficult it will be for us to grow our economies. The challenge is that we get entangled in geopolitics, and of course, the beneficiaries of our chaos are our trading partners overseas, and so they would always want us to have divisions so that they can benefit. And it is a game. We just need to understand that it's just a game.
Let me get your thoughts on this. Africa, one currency. What are your thoughts on that? Would you say that we should have one currency as Africans?
Just like the European Union has. It's a dream that's ambitious. Okay. To the extent that we can do it, it's fine. Okay. But I feel that maybe we should start small. The West African One Currency initiative needs to come on, because that will unite our countries together, will integrate our economies together. We're able to trade among ourselves very quickly, and we can form trade blocks for certain commodities that we can engage the rest of the world. Our central banks can be talking. We can, borrow among ourselves, and so on. So there's all these benefits that's important. But beyond just having one currency, I think we need to have one development agenda.
Let's have a goal, a plan.
Yeah, let's go back to this point where from the north to the south, we have a railway that is very efficient, and you don't need to travel by air only. Let's go to that point where we have a number of airlines, 3 countries, 4 countries pulled together. Ghana, Togo, Mali, Benin will be pulled together into having one airline and share the benefits among themselves and create that route for us. And then that airline can then engage other airlines. Can you imagine the benefits? Let's get to that point where we are very crazy in the thinking of our wealth and very selfish for the sake of our people. That is what Pan-Africanism is: exchanging your expertise, your resources together in order to become very powerful. I think that young Africans need to start thinking this way. Strategic Africans need to start thinking this way. It's no longer tenable that we will be a continent of resources and unable to leverage the resources for the wealth of our people. That is, for me, is unconscionable and should never happen in this time.
Okay, thank you. So let me take your final words. I know we are wrapping up, and it has been a very insightful conversation speaking to you. So let me take your final words to trade in Africa, to climate change, and to African leaders and the youth, especially how to develop ourselves, how to develop the capabilities to that level where we wouldn't have to travel overseas to seek greener pastures, but we can develop our country and continent on our own.
I'll start from the youth. And look at Ghana, for example, 33, 35 million people. 60% are between the ages of 18 to 25. This bloc, they elect presidents, they elect MPs, they elect political leaders. I want that youth today in our elections, born together to extract a social contract with the politicians and say, set them standards. These are the things that we want to improve ourselves on. This is how we want jobs created. This is what we want, and so on. So that power, leveraging that power is very important. Among that is the demand that the youth might be set for the future, now and for the future. They must invest in our education. They must invest in venture capital that can stimulate job and employment. They must invest in industrialization. And we must do that with the thinking of the youth and getting them to work. That's the first thing. The second thing I think we should all promote African Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's a brilliant idea, and it's laudable. We can trade among ourselves, and it saves us from having to have dictates from other external parties of how we train ourselves. We must also elect leaders. We also must have leaders that really will invest in the competence of managing the country, invest in the technical abilities of managing the countries. I would wish that we'll separate MPs from competent people, technical people that can run a country, so that we do have very strong partnership, representation of the people, and the managers of the economy can clash very well, so we can push things to go. And I want to see us dealing with the issue of climate change by leveraging the benefits from it, managing our resources well by getting carbon credits, $978 billion per year. We should think about leveraging that. That's free money, and it will help us to invest that into our green growth strategy. And I think that if we do that, it will really be good. And let's focus on agriculture.
Okay.
Grow what you eat what you grow. Okay. And I think that will be very powerful if we can focus on that.
Yeah. So we need to grow what we eat what we grow. So these are words of Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo. I mean, he's having a multifaceted personality, and it has been great speaking to him. He's a great mind, and we want him on board in Ghana. And then Africa is really having a good feel of him when it comes to policy implementation and policy designs. So this is still an exclusive interview with Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo. Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo is an African diplomat in governance and also a development expert. He's an expert in international trade and supply chain standards, and he has over 25 years of experience working in 36 countries. Not 15 or 20, but 36 countries, shaping policy design and operational implementation of Africa's international diplomacy, as well as geopolitics, governance, and human and economic development. He also has 16 years of experience with the United Nations and has served as a senior advisor to the Executive Office of the Secretary General's Office. And recently, he is a senior policy advisor to the UN Secretary General in the Sahel region. And one interesting thing, I said this in the intro, is the son or a son of the Gambukum community. So this Dr. Ishmael Nii Dodoo, a very promising individual who can help shape Ghana and transform the continent. My name is Prince Opoku Dogbe, and this program was proudly sponsored by Tias Group and KAIS. Tias is offering agribusinesses and investors with 80% financial support for all who want to own an agribusiness or an agro-processing factory. And KAIS is a B2B e-commerce platform that connects the African agribusiness market to the Asian market. So if you have your product and you want to put it on KAIS, kindly download the KAIS app and follow the prompts or the requirements. This has been insightful, and we've had a detailed conversation on trade and international relations. My name is Prince Opoku Dogbe once again. Meet you same time next week. For now, bye-bye.